Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel with me, your host Matthew Morgan. You will see that today we are not going to have a standard shotgun review. Instead, we are proud to bring you the essential guide to shotgun cleaning as part of our essential guide series. This video is proudly sponsored by the British Shooting Show, and if you do like the content, please hit like, please hit subscribe, because we do appreciate your support. So today's video is something I get asked about all the time. How do I clean my shotgun? What are the best products? What do you use, Matt? Today, you're going to find out everything. Now, for this video, we have been very lucky to be able to team up with Tetra Gun UK now. If you're not aware of Tetra Gun products, they've been out in the UK since probably the early 2000s. I can remember the early days when Kevin Gill, God rest his soul, used to bring the products in. They've got some fantastic products, some that I've used before, some that I haven't. So we're going to guide through some of those. But even better than that, after I've finished playing with all this, including this minion-related cleaning device, you can win it all. For full details of how you can win all these fabulous Tetra goodies, stay tuned right till the end and we will let you know how you can be in with a chance of winning it. If you aren't lucky enough to win it, we are also offering you a discount code so you can try some of these fantastic products yourself and not just take my word for it. So why do we clean our shotguns? Now, for me, there are three primary reasons for this. The first one is, of course, while we're using it, we need to protect it from the elements. The second one is, of course, to increase the longevity of the gun. So, you know, if you're going to own it for 10, 15 years, cleaning it, looking after it and having it serviced accordingly is going to make it last that time, no problem. And the third one is, let's not forget, we look at guns on this channel from a few £100 to 25, 30,000. Whatever gun you've got, it's a considered purchase. It needs to be looked after. And ultimately, by doing these things we're going to show you today, it will enable you to retain the value in that shotgun. So before we actually start cleaning and get into the practical side of things, what do you need to clean a shotgun? Now, there are a plethora of items available on the market, different products, loads of different cleaning kits, loads of different lubricants, oils, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through what I use. Obviously, we've got some fantastic Tetra products here to try out as well. Like I said, some I've used before, some I haven't. If you're new to shooting, you will most likely have purchased a cleaning kit. These are usually quite comprehensive. Obviously, this is the Value Pro one from Tetra Gun. It's got everything you need in there. It's got the various brushes, it's got patches, it's got grease. What I will say is there's not many cleaning kits that come with grease, and I understand as well that's not an expensive kit, so definitely worth a look. This is a boar snake, boar boa. Obviously, it's some kind of boa constrictor joke in there. The idea with this is if you've been shooting and you want to clean your gun before you go home, it's a really good idea to have it in your kit bag. You've got a nice long tail that goes all the way down the barrel with a weight on it, and it's basically what they used to call pull-throughs. Handy bit of kit, not really for home cleaning when you've got a lot of extra time, but certainly one putting in your kit bag and clean it on the spot. Silicone gun cloth. Now, the idea behind this is you can kind of wipe it over the whole of the gun because it's lubricated. They're usually okay just to wipe on the stock as well, but ultimately because they've got that built-in protection, it will make the gun a bit more protective in the rain, that kind of stuff. Patches, these are super important. You can shove these down the barrel with or without a jag, which is a little part that comes in the cleaning kit, which we'll look at shortly. And of course, if you're as old as me, you'll remember, don't forget your toothbrush. So this is actually a brush which is really, really handy for little places you can't get in, maybe under the rib, certainly at the back of ejectors or inside ejectors, which is what I would use it for. Moving on to some of the actual products. Action Blaster. Now, this is an all-round massive strength cleaner, so you can blast the action out as it suggests. You can clean barrels with it. It's a synthetic oil, so it won't damage anything. In fact, it's very good for pistols, but sadly we can't have them in this country anymore. So a good all-round kind of lubricant and oil, but a bit more fierce for those hard to reach places, and that built on carbony crud. Then we've got an oil conditioning lubricant. You can clean the barrels with this. One of the key things that Tetra Gun are very, very proud of is that they've got this CLP system, which basically means you can clean your gun with it, you can lubricate it with it, and it will protect your gun. So those three letters, CLP, always remember those and keep them in your head, particularly throughout this video. Then we've got some triple action, which is the CLP in a little bottle, which you can put on the barrels, outside the barrels, because it does clean, lubricate and protect, because it's got fluoropolymers in, which makes it very, very safe for all kinds of surfaces. Now, we've also got a fluffy mop, not a Tetra product, and we've also got one thing which I will talk about, and that is an essential item, particularly for cleaning modern shotguns, which is a Payne Galway brush. Final point, which is super, super important, is you need a big roll of kitchen roll. super absorbent, really handy for not getting crud everywhere, because when you start cleaning barrels and things, there's going to be a lot of mess. Take that into account. Get yourself a cleaning mat, an old towel, something like that. Finally, we're very fortunate to have this fantastic Pro Vise to be able to do everything in. Really smart bit of kit for rifles and shotguns. It's got nice soft rubbery bits so you don't damage your gun. You've got a thing where you can pop the vise in the back of the stock, make it nice and tight, and you've just got full access throughout with all these little cubby holes to put your products and your brushes and your cleaning bits and bobs in. Right, so we have arrived at the cleaning part of the video, the actual cleaning part. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the barrels, which is where I always tend to start when I'm cleaning my shotgun or cleaning any kind of shotgun. Like I said, this is nicely secure in here, but what we'll do is we're going to unscrew it, take the gun out so I can show you how to take it apart properly and effectively. So most conventional over and under shotguns have got some kind of latch on the fore end, whether it's here or a push button on the end. Take that off, top lever across, and then the barrels just back towards you slightly, and they will pop out the action. We'll pop the action aside for a second, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually put the barrels back on here. The first thing I will always do when I clean a set of shotgun barrels, particularly if it's a multi-choke, is remove the chokes, because when you start cleaning the barrels, if the chokes are still in situ, you don't really get them cleaned properly because you haven't cleaned the threads out. So first thing to do is get your choke key. I've got a Universe, I've got a Teague one here. Whip the chokes out. Spinny, 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 spinny. And you already see there's a bit of crud, which we're going to clean off. That's one choke. And then the other choke. And what that does now is, of course, expose the choke threads for when you start cleaning it with the rods. Now, it's very important with a cleaning kit or with cleaning rods to always clean the barrels from the breech to the muzzle, because essentially what you've got to remember is the muzzle is always tighter than the breech because they're usually tapered, they have a tapered bore, and because of that, this is where this little bad boy comes in. Now, this is a Payne Galway brush. If you imagine that most modern over under shotguns or even semi-autos have got overbore barrels, we talk about 18.6, 18.7 millimeters. A standard traditional phosphor bronze cleaning brush, which you might have bought 40 years ago, is only really for cleaning 18.4 bores. So what you've got to remember is you're not completely covering the correct amount of surface area with that brush. To make it easier, and of course we've got longer forcing counts too in modern over and unders, is get yourself a Payne Galway, which is known kind of a bit like a chamber brush. It's a lot stiffer, it's a little bit wider. Pop it on your cleaning rod, and what I would do is I would take one piece of the rod off and concentrate on the barrels in this area where the cartridge opens up, usually sort of 6 to 10 inches down the barrel, where you get the most plastic, the most lead, that kind of stuff. So what I would normally do is remove the chokes. We get some famous kitchen towel, trying to wrap yourself up like a mummy, like Tutankhamun, okay? Put the barrels onto that. Then we're going to take all conditioned lubricant, because this, of course, we can clean the barrels with that, and we can also protect the barrels. Remember, CLP. We'll put a little bit of a squirt down there, and then we get stuck in with our Payne Galway brush. So remember, just give it a good scrub. Obviously, when you do this, your voice changes. That's really important. So what I suggest you do is don't talk when you're scrubbing. And then remember, when it comes out, it's going to be a bit dirty. 5 or 6 times, unless you've got any real bad soiling. And then what I would do is I would put the other part of the rod together. Remember, we've got here the Value Pro kit, which has got a 3-piece rod, but it's the same kind of length. So even if you've got like a 32-inch gun, you should be absolutely fine with that kit. I've purposely not used the rods of that because that's a prize, and I don't want people to have things that are soiled. Back onto the barrels. And we're going all the way through. So what you're doing now is you're cleaning the threads. As you get towards the end of the barrels, I would always give it a twist just to make sure you get properly through the threads. Now, you've got a choice to make here. You can either keep pulling the rods towards you and then risk getting covered in lots of little speckled bits, maybe like a mini egg, or you can push it the other way and get the rod out from the muzzle end. Entirely up to you. What you must do is make sure that your rod goes all the way through. Some cheaper cleaning kits, not like the Value Pro, you'll actually find that you've got a wider diameter this end and you can't actually get it up the barrel, but that's usually only the case with small bore shotguns. So what we do now is we have a good look up there, and you can see we've got a nice film of that CLP protective layer protecting inside the barrels. We've removed all of the dirt. Now what I would do in this instance, I would get a nice little fluffy brush called a wool mop. We've got a brand new one here. It's worth pointing out as well is I see a lot of customers, and you know, they come in here and they finish shooting and they've got an old cleaning kit which comes in as part of the deal, and they haven't bought a new cleaning kit or new items for 30-40 years. These are consumable items and you do need to replace them. So something like a wall mop or a phosphor bronze brush, if you're cleaning your gun once a week, I would say 6 months and they should probably be replaced. So you put your wall mop up your barrels, and you'll be amazed how many times you can go up and down these barrels with this wall mop and still come out with kind of residue of carbon deposits, of lead, of plastic fouling. But looking up there now, they look pretty spot on. Now what I tend to do, this is a top tip from me, what I tend to do is I tend to get the famous kitchen towel out, roll it up, and then push it into the breech. Now you can use patches for this as well, which we'll show you shortly, but I've always done this, so I'm probably not going to stop because I'm too old to not bother. And what that does is it will just run down the barrel like a nice squeaky noise, like you're in an umpa band usually, and that just kind of finishes off the cleaning process. But let's not forget, we've still got a nice little film of that Tetra protector in there, the all conditions lubricant. Well, it's not raining in here, but you know, you can do it outside if you want to do it in different conditions. That's entirely up to you. So what we've done is we've essentially cleaned the majority of the barrels. Now what you would typically do without the kitchen towel is you would get a jag. This is a jag, so like I said, I'm not going to soil this. This is a prize. We want people to have it completely pristine and as it should be. But what you do is you'd screw it onto your end of your rod, and you'd wrap the jag through there and wrap it round. So it's a little piece of cloth. We've got a big pack of them here. You can just see in there, it's basically a little piece of cloth. And what that does is you wrap it round and that will finish off the cleaning process. One thing I do want to make really, really clear is that the key part of cleaning the barrels, in my opinion, is that you pay special attention to the chambers and threads. Now that sounds like a Warhammer shop, but it's not. But what you've got to remember is there are certain manufacturers that don't actually chrome line their chambers. And it's very easy to overlook chambers when you're cleaning a shotgun barrel because you just kind of focus on the bit ahead of the forcing cones and make sure that you remove all the plastic and the lead. However, with the combination of the Payne Galway brush, remember that's that super stiff badger, the correct lubricant, obviously we've used the all conditions lubricant fluoropolymer for these barrels, and a bit of elbow grease, you'll get your chambers nice and clean. Like I said, it's more important with a modern over under that you cover that extra surface area, and the only way to do that is really with that, or you'll be potentially there all day with a standard brush. Give yourself the chance of putting your fingers inside the chambers to make sure they are nice and clean, because like I said, if they haven't been chrome lined, they are susceptible to pitting. And what you don't want is pitted chambers, because it's a very, very expensive repair with a gunsmith. You get to the point whereby you can't actually effect a repair on the chambers, and you have to have the gun completely relined or re-sleeved, which is very, very expensive, and in most cases it's just not cost effective enough. So if you look after the barrels, don't forget these are completely made of metal. Bluing is a chemical process. If you're out in the rain, make sure you dry them properly. Don't get any kind of fizzy pop, or acid or blood is also a horrendous one. You see a lot of guns with spots of blood where people have sort of had them over the shoulders and carried game birds. You've got to look after these things, and investing in the right kind of cleaning stuff is absolutely the way forward. Now to finish off, we're going to put a tiny bit of the bore conditioner, which is the triple action stuff. And what this does on the outside of the barrels is it leaves a nice little film, which again is cleaning, lubricating and protecting. We'll get a bit of kitchen towel, and you can actually see it's sort of sat on the outside of the bluing with these little micro fluoropolymers, and it creates a surface, it creates a barrier. So when you do go out again in the rain and it starts hammering down like it does here in the UK, you can be safe in the knowledge that your barrels have got that nice little bit of film on the outside. And also from a retail point of view, when I sort of sell guns, I always put a little bit of this on, because it just gives a really nice glossy sheen to a set of barrels that even look a little bit dull. Now in terms of the rest of the barrels, you've got the ribs. You can usually clean those with like a cotton bud or something like that, or you've got the little Tetra toothbrush thing. Final point is that toothbrush there is very, very handy. It's a nylon brush to clean behind the ejectors if you can get behind them. With Brownings, however, they are two-piece ejectors, and you can actually take them apart, which is very easy to do. You've got one screw, you've got a dog and a leg, take them apart, and you can clean to your heart's content behind them. Now, what we've done here with this set of Beretta barrels, we have cleaned, we have lubricated, so now we're going to protect. So with a monoblock of a barrel, it's all about really cleaning what you can see. So get your kitchen towel, we'll get a little bit of lubricant on there, and it's a question of just rubbing it into the gaps now, just to get any, you know, unspent powder and that kind of stuff. You do create a lot of residue when you fire a shotgun, so if you can get those surfaces as clean as possible, that is going to prolong the life of your shotgun and make it better. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break the cardinal rule that I promised I wouldn't. We're actually going to steal some of the grease out of the Value 2 Pro Kit. So from a lubrication point of view, a little bit of Tetra grease on all the surfaces. This is a Beretta where there's going to be any kind of contact. So where the barrels lock in, where the trunnions are in the bottom of the action. So basically there, you might want to put a little bit on the ejectors just to make them slide nice and easily. And essentially, that's your barrel. We've cleaned them, we've lubricated them, we've protected them. Final piece is you get your chokes. Give them a wipe over. Now we've already kind of saturated this piece of Bounty, or the kitchen towels are available, with the cleaner to give the threads a clean. Again, you can use a cloth for this, you can use an old towel, whatever you want to do. Just bear in mind it can be a bit messy gun cleaning, but it's very satisfying also. And then a little bit of the grease. Now I prefer to use grease on chokes and, you know, contact parts rather than oil, because one of the key things, particularly with this grease, is very fine, but also this grease doesn't migrate, it doesn't move around, it's very sticky, it bonds extremely well to all surfaces, obviously particularly metal. I was at a gun shop recently and a guy bought a gun into part exchange, and he'd absolutely, it looked like he dropped it in a muller fruit corner. There was grease all over the place. If you put excess grease on any of these pressure bearing parts, they will automatically pick up what you don't want them to pick up, and you're essentially creating a cheesy sandpaper, and you will damage the inside of your gun. So don't go overboard with the grease, just enough on your chokes, just enough on your trunnions and your moving parts, and that's all you need. And then we screw it back in with our little choke key. Obviously it came out a bit gritty, a bit noisy, but it goes in a lot smoother. Final point, this is my third or fourth or 17th final point, because I keep remembering things. In terms of chokes, I would recommend you take them out every time you shoot them, because what you will do is you will get a build up and you'll get to the point where they become very difficult to move, particularly if you've been out in horrible weather, because they will rust in eventually. So it doesn't take long. Whip the chokes out, get some CLP on it, and remember those 3 letters and you'll be all right. So barrels checked off the list. You can still see now we've got that lovely shine, a lovely sheen on the barrels, that we know that they're protected. So should those grey clouds turn into rain, we'll be okay. Now, one thing I want to show you, just as a bit of an experiment, is what I've got here is I've got some action blaster. Now, that is exactly as it sounds. It's designed to get into all the little nooks and crannies. You know, if you've not had your gun apart for a considerable amount of time, whip the stock off, and then you'll end up with one of these, which is a Miracle, no shot there, action. Now what I want to do is, while I'm talking to you about this next bit, I'm actually just going to put this on top of some kitchen towel, give it a really good blast, and you'll be amazed how much crud we actually managed to remove from that block of metal. So this is really good, because the majority of people never take the stock off the shotgun, and the gun will end up being very dry if it's out in all weathers. You are going to get rusty hammers, rusty firing pins, that kind of stuff. And if we go back to what I said at the start of the video, it's all about protecting the gun and increasing the longevity of it. So what we're going to do is give it a good blast, give it a good soaking. Obviously with this gun vise, we've got this handy little tray, so you can get it to all run into there via the kitchen towel. And we're going to leave that sort of 10 minutes, go back to it and just see the difference it's made, and how much of that residue, that crud and that fouling that's removed. So while we wait for that action blaster to take effect, I feel like I'm on a cooking show, we're going to have a look at some wood. Now, although the wood is extremely important, it's a vital part of the shotgun, there's not as much to clean as there is with, of course, the metal parts. It's more really about protecting it, because When you have a shotgun, normally there will be a finish on it. It will be an oil or a lacquer. So what you need to do is protect and preserve that. So although we haven't got a Tetra product here, there is a walnut oil type thing, I believe. But it's very important that periodically you give your stock a bit of love. The most important thing, I can give you 2 tips really, is when you're doing anything with the stock, if you're applying any wax or oil, don't put too much on and don't put it in the checkering, because it will become all gummy, all gunked up, and it's a nightmare to get out. On top of that, if you find yourself in a deluge on a Sunday afternoon before you get to the pub when you've been shooting, when you get home, you must make sure you dry your stock out properly, because it is wood and it does behave in a way that it doesn't like being too hot, too cold, too wet. So what I would recommend you did is take your stock in action, put it on a towel just in front of the radiator, and then just let it dry naturally, rather than trying to make it dry too quick, or more importantly, putting it away wet, and of course it will then swell, and that's going to cause you major problems and ultimately lead to potential cracking. So what I tend to do in terms of my regime when I'm trying to protect my stock is I'm going to use some conditioning oil, which is a gun stock oil, which is linseed based. You want a tiny bit on your fingers, and then you just rub it into the stock. The faster you do it and the warmer you get it, the better it is, because it goes into the wood, and you can just see the difference there now. It's just going nice and sheeny. Just get the oil, work it into the stock. Remember to avoid the checkering completely. Take it out of the vise. You can see there's bits I've missed because it's been in the vise. Just keep rubbing it, and eventually it'll just start to go a little bit tacky, and I tend to leave it a couple of 3 hours and then just put another coat on. And all you're doing is you're just giving it that extra little bit of layer of protection, because also it's worth taking into consideration that with a lot of new shotguns, there is time constraints with manufacture. They don't all have time to do 30, 40 coats of oil, and you are going to get little bits of porous areas. So just something like this with a wax, with an oil, every month if you like. You don't have to use your hands to do this. You can also use something like a silicone cloth, or maybe a patch will be okay. But what you don't want to do is use anything that breaks down too easily and is going to get stuck to the stock. I've just always used my hands. I know there are people that do traditional English oil finishes that also use gloves. So that's pretty much woodwork wise. It's just more a question of protecting it and just understanding that this is a natural product, and if it gets wet or extremely hot, extremely cold, there can potentially be consequences. So all as you're doing with giving it a bit of a finish and rubbing some stuff into your stock is minimizing the risk. It's exactly the same for the forend. I'll just do it again. Tiny bit on your fingers, just rub it in. Obviously use a bit of common sense so you would avoid the areas like the checkering, like the metal bits, because ultimately all you're doing is you're making yourself more work if you put too much on, because you've got to take it off. Give it a good rub, and when you start to feel it going tacky, just leave it to dry somewhere and then come back to it 2 or 3 hours. Just give it a rub, buff it off, and like I said, with 4 or 5 coats you'll start to get a really nice bit of protection and a nice sheen. So just to recap, I've used a CCL product. This is a linseed based oil. You can also use wax, you can use silicone oil. It depends very much on your preference of finish, because of course remember, the more coats of oil you put on a gun, the shinier it's going to get. If you use a wax, it will create more of a matte finish. So it's personal preference, but just go gently with it and don't go mad, because I've seen a lot of kind of homemade efforts over the years, and if you're not careful you can potentially do a bit of lasting damage to the stock, or more so cover the bright work with a load of crap and basically someone else will get it off. So there's the wood. It's more really a case of protecting it, whereas with the barrels we've got the whole CLP, we've got the clean, the lubricate, protect. With the wood it's more of just a P, if you like. Have a P please Bob from Blockbusters. Now onto the action. Now with this is kind of a mixture of the two, because what we'll do here is we'll just get that out of the vise. Now if we start with all the parts where there's going to be any sort of residue, any sort of crud, it's going to be where the gun opens and closes. Most importantly though, it's going to be down the back of the firing pin. So what I would always do is I would always give the action a little bit of a squirt inside. So we go back to the action blaster. Okay, bit of a squirt there. So that's getting inside behind the firing pins and kind of loosening up any of that residue, any of those deposits on the back of the firing pins, and also giving it a little bit of lubrication. Now for this I'm going to use my yellow cloth because it matches my gun cleaning vise, my Minion vise. Don't forget, if you do win all this stuff, there are some Tetra patches, and the patches are universal. You can clean your barrels with them. You can wipe your action over. There's just a little flannelette patch that are very, very, very handy. And in this, you get 100. And if you find that you've got a 28 bore and you want to smaller patches, you just cut them with scissors. Right, so onto the action. And it's a question of what you can really see is what you can clean. Now, this is a old aging 687 EE So what we've got here, we've got some sort of slightly tarnished side plates that are looking a bit worse for wear. So what we're going to do to make them a little bit brighter is we're going to give them some of the all condition lubricant. And I'm just going to rub it onto the action. Remember, this cleans, lubricates and protects. So it's got that nice kind of sheen already appearing on it, which just means that because particularly I chose this gun especially, these older kind of Berettas and most EEs, as it happens, they haven't got the same finish, same sort of nickel plating as something like a 694, so they can be a little bit more susceptible to rust, to corrosion, to tarnishing. So with something like this, a little bit of a film over it, and that's going to last you nicely throughout the season when you're out there in all kind of weathers. Now, in the inside of the action, we've talked about blasting down the back of the firing pins if you can't physically remove the action from the stock, and the rest of it is more of a kind of a lubrication issue, because when we get the barrels and we lock them into the action, there's quite a lot where there's metal to metal contact. Remember, we've already greased the barrel, so it's sounding nice and positive. There's no graunchiness, there's no grittiness, but there's also plenty on the action that we can lubricate as well. So for this, we're going to use the all conditions lubricant. Once again, we're going to put a little bit on the shoulders on either side of the gun, and also on the bottom where it locks into the barrels. And you could also use the grease for this. The reason I've chose to use the all conditions lubricant is because it reduces wear. Now, these are big traffic areas. Every time you open your gun and close it, you're going to get wear. It's metal contact. You're going to get witness marks. But with the grease, it's a little bit obviously stickier, so it maybe stick a little bit better. But don't go mad, don't over grease it, because all you're going to do then is attract all those particles and those foreign objects, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. In terms of the rest of the action, i.e. the top lever, etc., you've got to remember that the actual operation of the top lever is inside the action. However, it wouldn't hurt to put a little bit of lubrication on the back strap just underneath the top lever. For this, I'd maybe probably go back to the lubricant rather than the grease, because it's just a little bit thinner as a liquid. Rub it in with a cloth, and that's just going to make things, going to just sit underneath the inside of the top lever and just make it a little bit more easy to open and close. And the trigger itself, again, it's all about cleaning what you can see. So if you've got a build up or you've got a bit of a crud underneath the back of the trigger like we have here, what I would do is I get some action blaster, because that will attack those foreign bodies that are there, and then get your yellow minion cloth, give it a scrub, and you can already see it starting to move that and giving a bit more brightness to that old tired looking bright work. Obviously, this gun hasn't got a detachable trigger group like a DT10, DT11, Pratzi, Gamba, that kind of stuff. If you have got one of those guns, they can be easier to clean, because you can take the trigger group out, give it a bit of an action blaster, get rid of all those bits and pieces and nasties in there, and then you can lubricate it before you put it back. So the only way, of course, to get really inside this and get at the working parts is to strip it completely, which is, of course, what we've done with this Miracle here. So this is a Miracle that we had a bit of a go out with the action blaster, and you can see the actual general appearance of it, the whole thing. So if you go somewhere that does a lot of engineering, you'll see fresh in machine parts, and they kind of look like this. They've got that really crisp, bright looking color. This is the same. We've given it a good blast inside, but what's really good about this is the action blaster itself almost kind of evaporates. So it does its job. It removes the horrible dirty stuff, and then it kind of almost dries itself like a hairdryer. And then what you can do then is you can go in and you can lubricate the necessary parts. So for this, I would use the grease. We would go back of the hammers, because of course they're going forward. We've got a lot of movement there. And just anywhere you can see metal to metal touching, a tiny bit of grease, or if you are going to use the lubricant, I'd put a cloth underneath the action first, just so it doesn't go everywhere. But then when you put it back together, you know, everything's nice and lubricated and it's functioning at its maximum capacity. One final point that I want to just stress: when you've done your cleaning, you've got your barrels clean, your action clean, you've done a bit of protection for your wood, if it is that you like to kind of put a lot of oil on your gun, it's important to remember that that oil's got to go somewhere when you put it in your cabinet. What I would do is I would put the gun barrel down, so any excess oil will always run off into the bottom of the cabinet rather than into your wood, which can potentially affect the integrity of the wood. So we've talked about why we clean, we've talked about what we use to clean, and we've talked about how we clean, and that is pretty much the essential guide. There's a lot of information in there. Obviously, we could go a lot deeper. We could look at different products, but I think, particularly if you're new to shooting, hopefully you will have learned something from this. There's a lot of products out there. Obviously, we focused today on the Tetra Gun products. There is a whole load more stuff than what we've looked at. So do go on the website and do have a look. Don't forget, the guys at Tetra UK have very kindly offered us a discount code, so you can try the grease, you can try the action blaster, all that kind of stuff. And if you really want to go the whole hog, you can invest in one of these fantastic Pro Visors as well. If you don't want to buy any and you think, nah, I'm going to win it, this is the time. So in order to win the whole goodie bag that Tetra have kindly supplied with us, which is going to be the vise, the cleaning kit, which I didn't use, the bore boa, we've got some lubricants, some oils, there's a few more bits and pieces other than what's on the table here today. What you need to do is you need to comment on the video about what you would like to see us cover next as part of the essential guide. Do you want me to look at different length screws in recoil pads? Do you want me to look at different coloured sight elements? We want to hear from you, and we will pick a winner at random. This is not a competition on who's got the best suggestion, because obviously I've already got it with the length of recoil pad screws. It is simply a giveaway, and a fantastic giveaway at that. I would like to thank everybody at Tetra Gun UK for their kindness in allowing us to use the products and of course offering the giveaway. If you've enjoyed today's video and you found it helpful and informative, please do hit like, give us a subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell. If you've got any questions about anything we've covered in this video today, please feel free to contact me directly. Details are on the screen. Don't forget to check out the website, but more importantly, go to the Tetra Gun website. Details are on the screen for that. There's lots more products. You can learn about the products we've used here today. And finally, as ever, big thank you to our sponsors, the British Shooting Show. Not long to go now, and we will be there in February, most likely with some Tetra Gun products, so come along and say hi to us. And from me, Matthew Morgan, the essential guide to shotgun cleaning, I'll see you next time.